Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Coffee Break, and welcome to Exploring Protoss, the 3-gate Robo build order. In this video, I just want to give you a little instruction on how exactly to execute this build order. And to start off, I want to talk a little bit about why I chose this build. The reason I chose the 3-gate Robo build order is because it is a very simple build to execute. B, it gets you a lot of production facilities up in the early game, so that allows you to defend against any timing pushes that might come your way, any sort of sketchy, cheesy play that your opponent may be doing. And C, it's kind of a portal into the mid game. It allows you to do all sorts of things off of it. You can expand behind it and start working on your economy. You can do some sort of one base timing push, one base tech play off of it. It's just, it's really open. It allows you to do a lot off of it. And before we go into this, I just want to point out a couple of things. First of all, I want you to keep an eye on the timer down here. And occasionally, I will point out a few things and reference the timer. You know, at 2:20, I want you, to be doing this, or, at 4:30, you're going to lay down these buildings. The other area I want you to be keeping an eye on is right up here at the top, your resources, and more importantly, your supply. I will be referencing the supply the most throughout the game here as reference points as to when you should be laying down buildings and when you should pretty much just be doing certain things, execute certain strategies. At points throughout this video, I will go ahead and pause it to go a little bit more in depth into a certain thing, or just make sure I'm clear on something. So let's go ahead and get started here. First thing I want you to notice, right after I send my probes to the mineral line, I select my nexus, make a probe by hitting E and not clicking on the icon, and I bind it to hotkey number 1 by clicking the nexus and hitting Control 1, and that way I can just do 1E, 1E, 1E to make probes. And make sure you set this rally point to the mineral line by right-clicking on that mineral patch. That is going to be something you want to just kind of get in the habit of doing is, send your probes to the mineral line at the beginning of the game, make your probe, hotkey your nexus, and rally. Sounds like kind of a lot, but really it's 3 or 4 button clicks. Very, very simple to do. At 9 out of 10 supply, you're going to go ahead and lay this pylon down. Make sure you get that right at about 9 out of 10 supply. And then go ahead and make your 10th probe as soon as you can after that. And right when this pylon finishes up, bam, you're going to go ahead and chrono boost your nexus. And for this build order, you're going to chrono boost your nexus 3 times in a row. Right as soon as this chrono boost wears off, you're going to lay the next one down. And your first chrono boost will wear off right when this bar gets about halfway past this 4, about halfway in between this 4 mark. You're going to go ahead and lay down your second chrono boost. And at 13 supply, lay down your gateway and begin scouting with your probe. I will talk about scouting in just a moment. I'll get to that just a second here. So at 15 supply, right when that 14th probe finishes, you're going to go ahead and lay down your assimilator on your gas geyser. Now the reason I want to talk very briefly about why you're laying down the gateway and the assimilator at these specific times. The reason you would do this is because it's kind of this perfect balance between your economy and beginning to ramp up your production. So right when you hit 13 supply, you're going to have about 150 minerals, and this probe is going to be just starting. Probe is going to be just starting. And you could either queue up a second probe, and the probe's just going to kind of sit here in the queue, and what that does is it takes up resources that aren't being utilized at this very moment, and that's a bad thing. You're never going to want to queue up units as much as possible. I mean, at most, have a second unit queued up. Never, ever fill up this queue. Never do that. So right when you hit about 13 supply, you're going to have just enough resources to go ahead and make that gateway. Same thing with the assimilator. Right when you have 15 supply, you're going to start this next probe, and just going to have kind of 75 resources laying around, not really doing anything. So at that point, you're going to want to go ahead and lay down the assimilator. So 13 gate, 15 assimilator. I'm going to go ahead and go back in here. Scouting, we will talk about in just a second here. You see my probe is going across the mini-map right here. Is going across the mini-map, and right at about 2 minutes, 20 seconds or so, right at about 2 minutes, 20 seconds, or around that 16 supply mark, you're going to lay down your third and final chrono boost on the Nexus for this build until later on, at which point you can start chrono boosting probes out again. But for now, just remember 3 chrono boosts on the Nexus. One comes at 12 supply. One comes at 11 supply right when your first pylon finishes. The next one comes at about 12 supply when your probe is about halfway done, and the third one comes at 16 supply. Really, you just kind of do that as energy permits on your Nexus and as that chrono boost wears off. So make sure you get those chrono boosts pretty much as spot on as you can. That is a very important thing in the early game. At 16 supply, you're going to go ahead and lay down this next pylon. And right after you lay down that pylon, this gas should be finishing up. Go ahead and populate that. Put 3 units on that gas geyser. 3 units is the optimal amount to mine efficiently. Any more, any less, and you're not going to be mining efficiently out of that. You're going to have probes wasted. And real quickly, so we have the scout up in our enemy's base. What do we do with it? For now, all I want you to do is boom, check this first geyser, check this second geyser, and if you can, find what building they built first. In this case, we have a Zerg opponent, so we do have the spawning pool that got built first. But the really important thing is actually going to be these 2 gas geysers. And the reason I'm saying this, I don't want to go into now. It's kind of an advanced concept. We'll talk about it a little bit more in Exploring Protoss Parts 2 and Parts 3. But for now, I just want you to get in the habit of going, check Geyser 1, check Geyser 2, check the first building, and then you'll see that I'm going to go ahead and put that probe on to the Zelnaga watchtower. And that's just to scout to see if the opponent is going to be doing any sort of early push. Your opponent's going to have to walk straight by this watchtower if they want to get out of their base to attack you. And if you have something on this watchtower, you are going to be able to see it when they are coming at you, which is a very important point. Right when this gateway finishes up, you're going to lay down your cybernetics core at about 18 supply. And that's going to kind of give you the optimal timing to go ahead and start getting your production ramped up, start getting your tech ramped up. So up to this point, I want to pause one last time here and say the reason this first, 3 minutes, 30 seconds, 4 minutes is so pivotal is that you're going to be executing this exact build order every single time you play. Every single game you play as Protoss, no matter what build order you're doing, you're pretty much always going to be utilizing this setup. This is about the point where things will start to vary for different build orders, maybe a little bit later, but this is about the point. You really need to have this very solid opening prepared for every single game you play, and that way, I mean, this is really going to be the part that you want to practice the most, because I mean, I don't care if you're a new player or if you've been playing Brood War since 2000, this is going to be the opening that you will be utilizing every single game. Every single game. At about 19 or 20 supply, I want you to go ahead and start building a Zealot. You see that my Zealot here is almost complete, so at about 19 or 20 supply, go ahead and build your Zealot. That's just going to be able to defend against any sort of early Zergling, any sort of scout that's coming into your base. You're going to be able to deny it. And at about 22 supply, go ahead and lay down your pylon. And that's just going to make it so you don't get supply blocked once you start building your next gateway unit, and keep up your probe production. See the hint I'm dropping there, folks? Drop that pylon, make sure you get that down. And around 23 to 24 supply, your cybernetics core should be finishing up. And immediately, pause a little early, there we go. Immediately, bam, start that warp gate research and chrono boost it. The reason that we only use 3 chrono boost on this Nexus is so that we can start saving up energy to chrono boost out our warp gate technology. If you don't know what warp gate technology is, it allows you to turn your gateways into warp gates, and you can fairly much instantly warp in units anywhere where there is pylon power on the map. So I can make a pylon all the way right here in my opponent's base and start warping in Zealots and Stalkers into the base. That is pretty much the most essential upgrade for the Protoss race. Make sure you get that as soon as you can and start chrono boosting that out with your Nexus. And also, after you make your warp gate technology, go ahead and start making your Stalker. Now, you can also put a chrono boost down on that Stalker if you really want to. I personally like doing that, but it does sacrifice one chrono boost on that warp gate technology. You will get your warp gate out just a little bit later, rather than if you just spent all your chrono boost on that warp gate. That really just comes down to a user choice. Now you saw right there, I'm actually going to back it up just a little bit because I did miss that just a little bit. There we go. See me throw down that second chrono boost on that warp gate technology. And you see right here, I'm starting to save up minerals, and when I get to about 300 minerals, it's going to be between that 26 and 28 supply mark up there. I'm going to drop down gateway number 2 and gateway number 3. And you're just going to see me rally the stalker against this overlord. Don't want him getting too far into my base. Don't want him getting too far into my base. Now, at about the 28 supply here, you see I'm going to go ahead and lay down my next pylon a little bit earlier than I have been. Normally I've been doing it when I've been within about 2 supply of maxing out. The reason for that is because now I'm really starting to ramp up production. I'm starting to make more units. I'm going to have these 2 gateways finishing up in just a little bit here. The main reason is because of the warp gate technology. Once this finishes, you're going to be creating units at a super fast pace, and you really need to stay on top of those pylons. A good rule of thumb is once one pylon finishes, you're going to want to start the next one immediately afterward. That's once you kind of get your warp gate technology, once you get your production ramping up. Also to take note, on that 28 supply, I went ahead and laid down my second assimilator just to start getting a little bit more gas. I will talk a little bit more about that after this build is completed, why we were getting that second gas, when in reality we are beginning to bank it up just a little bit. Just a little bit there. Around the 30 supply mark, you're going to want to go ahead and lay down your robotics facility, and that's going to correlate very nicely with about the time that you this warp gate technology finishes up. These 2 gateways are going to finish up as well, and once this warp gate technology finishes very shortly here, you're going to go ahead and turn these warp gates into gateways by coming over here, control, here, I will even do it with you guys. I want you to control and left click one of your gateways. That's going to select all the gateways in the similar area. You can do that with any unit or building. If I control click a probe, it's going to select all the probes. Control click a building, select all the buildings. So that's a very easy way to get a lot of buildings doing the same thing at one time. And as you're going to see here, my research completes and I hit GGG. That turns all my gateways into warp gates. And right after that, you're going to see me go ahead and warp in some units right up here at my pylon. The reason you're going to start seeing me build pylons around my base here, I'm even going to drop 1 or 2 over here, is because of this warp gate technology. So if I have a Terran opponent coming over here to drop me, and he decides to drop me right here in the little corner of my base, if I have a pylon set up here, I can go ahead and instantly warp in some zealots and stalkers to begin defending against that drop. And it's just a very effective way to keep control of your base and not lose too much when your opponents attack. As for what you should warp in, just for now, until we talk a little bit more about scouting, keep it to 2 zealots and a stalker, or 2 stalkers and 1 zealot. Either one of those mixtures is going to give you a pretty good composition. Pretty good composition indeed. And at this point, you're going to want to make sure you see this pylon finishing up. You're going to want to make another pylon fairly shortly after. You're going to see me do that here. And right about this 40 supply mark, your robotics facility is going to finish up. And I actually want you, this is one thing, the only thing I really don't agree with what I did here. I dropped a pylon before making an immortal. I want you to switch that around. At about 40 supply, make your immortal. That's going to cost a lot of supply. Just to let you know, it's going to be 4 supply. So I want you to make your immortal and then make your pylon. This is going to put you at about 44 out of 50 supply. Don't forget to keep making probes. Always be making probes. And go ahead and chrono boost out this immortal. This immortal is going to be the unit that keeps you alive in the early game. I mean, it's going to help you defend so many different timing pushes, and really just going to be that essential piece that keeps your army glued together. And at this point, you can go ahead and resume your warp-ins. Go ahead, once again, 2 zealots and a stalker, 2 stalkers and a zealot. Either way, you're really going to be fairly good. Keep chrono boosting out that immortal. Go ahead and keep making probes. And right when that immortal finishes, go ahead and make an observer. And the reason we're making this observer right after this immortal, it's going to help defend against any sort of early sort of cheese play, any sort of cloaked play is what I'm getting at. Cloaked Banshees and Dark Templar both can come into your base about the 8-minute and 30-second mark. And so you see, we're starting this observer at about the 7:20 mark. This observer is going to be out with ample time to defend against any sort of cloaked play. You can choose whether you want to send this observer to your opponent's base to scout what they are doing, or if you want to keep it over your army. Either way, you're going to be fairly well off and going to be pretty good to go. Generally, as you get better, you're going to want to send this observer to your opponent's base to see what they are doing. But until we kind of learn how to use that scouting information effectively, just go ahead and probably keep it over your army for now, as long as you have control of this watchtower, because then you can still see when your opponent is going to go ahead and move out. Once again, you're going to see me kind of keep up with warp-ins. My supply getting a little bit close here, but oh, look at that. I already have a pylon on the way, because I'm following that rule of thumb that as a pylon finishes, you make another. And at this point, it's really up to you what you want to do. You're going to see me go ahead and pull a probe down to my natural expansion down here and expand. You can really do whatever you want at this point. You can make another immortal and go for a timing push. You can take a probe and make a robotics bay to go ahead and start doing Colossus play. You can just attack right now, try to do a little bit of damage. It is really up to you what you want to do with this build order at this point in time. The build kind of brings you up to about the 8-minute mark, and then you have to choose what you want to do. Do you want to do one base play and get a bunch of immortals and attack your opponent? Do you want to do one base play and tech up to Colossus? And that's going to bring me to my point of why we were getting that gas kind of early when we weren't really utilizing all of it. And right now you see my minerals are staying fairly well kept. You know, I'm not letting that mineral count get really high, but the gas count's sitting around 510. The reason for that is if we start doing any sort of tech play, that gas count is going to evaporate. It'll be gone instantly. Colossus alone, if you want to make one Colossus, it's going to take 200 minerals and 200 gas to lay down your robotics bay. That's going to be the building that allows you to start producing Colossus. I'm going to go ahead and go back real fast here so I can select units. That's going to be the building that allows you to start getting Colossus. And then if you want to make a Colossus, you have to spend another 300 minerals and 200 gas for one Colossus. And because they cost 6 supply, you're pretty much going to have to make a pylon to make a single Colossus. So it's going to be a very heavy investment to go ahead and get those higher tech units, especially on that gas count, because you are not going to get gas as quickly as you get minerals. You see you have 8 mineral patches, only 2 Vespian geysers per base. So gas is going to be the limiting factor in a lot of your builds later on. Just a couple of quick little closing statements about how exactly to do things. One, a little tip for warp gate technology. Once you have your gateways turned into warp gates, and I'm just going to say now, I do a lot of the time in my guides use the term warp gate and gateway interchangeably. They're pretty much one and the same. One easy way to use your warp gates is to hit W. W is the hotkey for warp gates, and it's just going to select every single warp gate you have. So you don't necessarily have to have them on a hotkey to be able to select them all. You don't have to, hit 5 to select them. You can just hit W. Very easy way to select your warp gates and get a quick warp in at your pylons. Go ahead and take a look real fast. I'm going to go over here in the darkness so it's easy to see. Go ahead and take a look real fast at my hotkey setup. This is totally subjectional. Totally subjectional. In fact, you can do your hotkeys any way you want, and I actually just completely changed mine. I used to have this setup completely different. I found that this is kind of a nice setup if you're going to play all the races, though. If you want to learn a little bit of each race, have your command building, in this case your Nexus, on 1, and that way once again just 1E is going to go ahead and start making probes for you. Have your robotics on 2, because you can select your warp gates with W. Have your robotics on 2 so you can just hit 2I for immortal. And once again, you can really just hotkey these however you want. This is just my own little hotkey setup. The last thing I want to talk about is your shift-click sequence. I don't know if this probe is set up. I might have to go back a little bit further. There. Oh, there you go. You see that I have this probe queued up to mine minerals, and then come back to this nexus and then mine minerals from this patch. And it's a very, very nice way to build buildings as any race, really. So in this case, I told my probe to build a nexus by hitting B, N, and then I held shift down. Hold it down, don't just click it. Hold shift down and start executing following up commands. You can right click on a mineral patch in this case, and then your probe will go right from making that building. It'll go start mining minerals, go back to the nexus, mine minerals, go back to the nexus, and just kind of resume that previous order it was doing. So always, always, always rally your workers back to your mineral patch. Now, this might seem kind of like a lot to do in your first delve into StarCraft 2. It's very, very important though that you start getting these basic concepts down. And if I were to list any two things that are the most important things to take away from this game, because they will apply to every single game you play as Protoss, always be building probes. Always be building probes. Just make it a habit. Every once in a while, hit your 1 key. Hit your nexus key. Whatever you have your nexus bound to. In this case, it's 1 for me. Hit your nexus key. Check down here on your status bar. See if you're building a probe. If your probe is almost complete, you actually see it at 17 out of 17, which is just about as complete as you can get it without it being done. If you have a probe almost complete within, 4 or 5 seconds of being complete, build another probe. Always be staying on top of that probe. And always be staying on top of your chrono boost. You see, I am getting a little bit behind here, but in about the first 8 minutes, it is the most pivotal thing to stay on top of those chrono boosts. That is going to be your macro function as Protoss to keep up with the opposing races, to keep up with the larva injects of the Zerg, and the mule ability of the Terran. And once you get that observer out, you can start spending chrono boosts on whatever you want. Go ahead and start chrono boosting more probes out. Go ahead and start chrono boosting another immortal out. Chrono boost whatever you want. Just make sure you are using those chrono boosts. So build probes and make those chrono boosts happen, and you will be pretty much good to go all the way through Gold League. So make sure you practice these fundamentals. Do not feel like you need to, play only 2 or 3 games and then rush to Protoss Guide number 2. Really, really, really focus on getting these fundamentals down. They're going to be the basis for all your games. If you have any questions about this build order, any questions in general at all, feel free to email me at coffeebreak1337@gmail.com. That is coffeebreak with an O 1337@gmail.com. I will get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you for joining me here on Exploring Protoss, the 3-gate Robo. I hope this video will be helpful to you. And again, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Until then, this is Coffee Break, signing out.